Are you not as rich or as successful as you want to be? If you're not, it's probably because you're not doing something that all successful people do. I'm going to show you what that something is by telling you a little story. This is George. George is unhappy in life. He doesn't have as much money as he would like, and he feels stuck in his personal life and his career. These past few weeks have been particularly bad for George. Some things have happened to him recently that's left him angry and frustrated. 3 things, in fact. The first was a couple of friends of George who trade stocks told him about a stock that was sure to go up this week. George got excited about this tip and went home and used some of his savings to buy some of the stock with his online account. A couple of days later, he was surprised to see the stock hadn't risen to the price he expected. In fact, it hadn't risen at all. Worse still, a day later, he was horrified to see that it went down significantly. He got worried his money would disappear completely, so he sold the stock, taking a huge loss. George was quite upset about this and blamed his friends. He kept asking himself, how could my friends do that to me? It's their fault I lost all that money. The second thing that happened to George recently was to do with his job. He'd been hoping for a promotion at work, which would mean more money for him and his family so they could get a nicer house and be generally less stressed about money. Unfortunately, just when he thought that the promotion was imminent, his boss called him aside to tell him that a colleague of his would be getting the promotion instead of George, and George would be staying where he was for now with no salary increase. George went home very angry. Why am I always overlooked for promotions? Why does my boss not like me, promoting his favourite people instead of me? Later that same week, in an attempt to help George overcome his money worries, George's best friend Peter arranged for them both to attend an evening real estate meeting. This was to learn about investing in real estate and to network with other investors. Admittedly, George felt a little bit intimidated by meeting other real estate investors. After all, what had he got to offer? On the day of the meeting, George began to feel more and more nervous about going. Yes, he knew he could meet some people that could help him with investing in real estate, but it just seemed all too scary. Besides, it was in the evening and he was tired and he was still in a bad mood with his boss. So he called Peter at the last minute and made up some excuse that he couldn't go. Understandably, Peter was angry with George for pulling out at the last minute and they got into an argument. A few days later, still frustrated with everything that was going on in his life, George was feeling down, so he went for a walk. While he was out, he saw a sign that said, "Presentation this evening. I will tell you why you are not rich." This got George curious. What was there to lose? He could just sit at the back anyway, so he decided to go. At the event, a well-dressed, successful-looking woman was presenting on stage. Her message absolutely stunned George. She said that the reason that the rich and successful people accomplish so much is because they do one key thing that most people don't do. They take responsibility for everything in their lives. She went on to explain that the reason most people remain unsuccessful is because they blame others. They assume the victim role and they make excuses. They do that because all those things justify their current situation and their lack of success, because it makes them feel okay about being stuck. Saying that it's someone else's fault that they are where they are is effectively saying that there's nothing they can do to change their situation. She continued by saying that making excuses, assuming the victim role and blaming others is ultimately saying that you have no control of your life. You are saying life happens to me. This is the opposite of a successful person's mindset. The successful person always says, I actively create my life. Then the speaker said something that really hit home for George, like a verbal slap in the face. She lowered her voice for maximum impact, closed in on the microphone and whispered, "Hey you, unsuccessful person. Nobody cares about your excuses. Your excuses are just for you and you alone. You use them to stay where you are, stuck. No one else cares about them." This shocked George into thinking back over the events of the past few weeks. He had lost money on that stock that his friends recommended he buy, and he blamed them for that. But when he really thought about it, he was the one that made the decision to buy it. He didn't have to act on his friend's advice. He chose to do it. When he looked at the situation through his new lens of his, he realised he'd been blaming his friends for losing money, but it was in fact his own fault. He was the one responsible. Then he thought about getting overlooked for that promotion at work. He'd assumed the victim role, claiming that his boss hated him and others always got promoted instead of him, but when he thought about that, he hadn't really taken the responsibility to do everything he needed to do to get promoted. He admitted it was his actions, or in this case, his lack of actions, that had resulted in his colleague becoming a better candidate for the promotion than him. Finally, he looked back on his argument with Peter. Thinking about it now, he had called Peter at the very last minute to say he wouldn't go to that real estate meeting. He didn't even have a very good reason for not going. He'd made up excuses not to go, which let his friend down, whereas in fact, he was just too scared. So on the walk home from the lady's riveting presentation, George decided that he was going to have to change his mindset. Instead of looking for reasons to remain stuck, he decided to start to look for reasons to move forward towards the successful life he wanted. When it came to stocks, he decided he wanted to be more in control of his own destiny. That meant not relying on his friends for stock market advice, but instead learning about stocks and reading books and articles online. He became more informed in the stock market and carefully invested, gradually building his portfolio. Of course, he still lost occasionally, but he accepted that as a risk, recognizing that it was his responsibility if and when it happened. He took control of his role at work. He decided to make himself look so good in this job that there was no way he could ever be overlooked for another promotion. He took on new responsibilities. It didn't matter what his colleagues were doing, he focused on what he could do to become the best candidate for advancement. He communicated constantly with his boss and consistently showed that he was an exceptional employee, capable of performing tasks well above his pay grade. Working in this way, a promotion was only a matter of time. Finally, he apologized to Peter for making excuses and he committed to going to the next real estate meeting with him. He was still nervous about it, but he made a commitment to Peter that he was not going to make excuses. At the next meeting, to George's surprise, everyone there was really nice. They even met some people interested in potentially getting into a real estate deal with them. In all these situations, George stopped blaming others and assuming the victim role. He stopped making excuses. Instead, he took responsibility for each situation and everything else in his life. This put him back in control of his life and helped him create the mindset of a successful person. He incorporated this new mindset into every aspect of his life, and it made him feel like a new person. There was no more life happens to him and he can't do anything about it. Instead, he knew he was now on the path to success by actively creating his life. He was finally in the driving seat. If you want wealth or success in anything, do what George did and what all successful people do. Accept responsibility for everything. Stop the blaming, stop the excuses, and never assume the victim role. Only this will allow you to take back control of your life and to drive it in the direction you desire. If you like our videos, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. And while you're down there, make sure you subscribe so you can watch our future videos as we release them. And if you've got any suggestions for future videos, please leave them in the comments below.